Hi, welcome to Cafe 229. Today we're very happy and honored to have Dr. Stephen Hayes. Dr. Stephen Hayes is the psychology professor from University of Nevada. More importantly, though, he is the founder of acceptance and commitment therapy. I, I don't know how much people know about ACT, but in the therapeutic world, Dr. Hayes is sort of like the Hall of Fame. Maybe he's sort of like the Scottie Pippen of NBA or something. I don't know. That's the best analogy, but hi, Dr. Hayes. How are you?
I'm feeling really good. I'm an NBA player. Woo-hoo. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much for being with us. So I guess since you are the founder of ACT, it'd be great if you can let our audience know a little bit about what is acceptance commitment therapy. Can you give us a little bit brief introduction of it?
Sure. It's been a 40-year development journey. I allow people to say I'm the instigator, originator, but I'm really only the co-developer of what we call ACT. ACT always reminds me of ECT, shock therapy, and I'm old enough to have seen that, so I don't want that association. But it's been a 40-year journey of trying to dig down to the smallest set of processes of change that make a difference in people's lives, that avoid them getting into cul-de-sacs or empower them to move towards the kind of life that they want to live. And so it's an evidence-based approach that in terms of the focus on the acceptance and mindfulness, you might say, processes, and commitment and behavior change processes, values, things of that kind, for the purpose of producing what we call psychological flexibility, which is the set of skills that we've developed over a 40-year journey that does more good, does more heavy lifting in more areas of human lives than any other set that is known in behavioral science. I'm sorry to say it in that self-praising way, but I think it's actually true. And so it's now 6,000 studies and almost 900 randomized controlled trials. It's a huge body of literature showing that these things matter.
So ACT does really show a lot of evidence on how it can change people's life and change people's behavior for the better good. Can you tell us a little bit what you mean by acceptance? Because some of our audience may not be familiar with what does that mean, acceptance, commitment, can you say a little bit, tell us a little bit more about acceptance?
None of our words are really adequate to the full, well-rounded set of things we're talking about when we're talking about complex human behavior and these deeper issues. But acceptance as we mean it goes back to the original Latin root, which meant to receive, and meant to receive as if to receive a gift. It's still in English. If you have a really precious gift you're going to give somebody, you might just say, here, would you accept this? And you don't mean, would you tolerate it? Would you resign yourself to it? Can you put up with a gift? You mean, will you willingly take in what's being offered? And what life offers us is the gift that comes from our history. Sometimes they're very painful gifts, but they're gifts nevertheless, because the wisdom will not be found by just leaping out of the womb. We come prepared for or sort of on a journey that could lead to a really empowered life, but we have to learn how to do that. And we're going to make things are going to happen. So by acceptance, I mean that choice to open up to the echoes of your history in the present moment without wallowing or entanglement or clinging, and to be able to use that to help direct you in a way that is not dominating, but is just part of the many, many sources of choices that you make to help you make the next life choice, to take that next step in the direction that you want to move.
So I loved your analogy that we are all born with, I guess, some form of gift that we may or may not want at first. So from ACT's perspective, why would someone feel distress in life? Like if someone feel anxious or depressed, what is sort of the main explanation that they're suffering from their depression, anxiety? I know you use the word flexibility in the past. Can you sort of elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, I'd be a little cautious about these words, except of depression, etc., because these are inside the modern world and in ways that have sort of biomedicalized human suffering. And from an ACT approach, it's not anxiety that's the enemy. It's not sadness that's the enemy. It's not any emotion that's the enemy. It's what you do with these emotions and thoughts and memory, bodily sensations. Your own experience is your enemy. Odd. I mean, we have ACT studies dealing with the chronically mentally ill who may hear auditory hallucinations or even see things visually. That's not your enemy. How do you relate to your own experience? And so what ACT, and I have the goal now, Peter, of getting you to say ACT rather than ACT, what ACT brings to the table is the knowledge that comes from our wisdom traditions now put through Western science traditions, or experimental, it's not just Western, that's really kind of a culturally biased way to say it, experimental scientific traditions that tell us that when you are able to take in your experiences in an open way that is not wallowing or clinging or avoiding,
okay,
orient your attention towards what's of importance, when you do that, all of your experiences can empower you and lift you up. Let me give you an example, one that you just said. If somebody very, very close to you dies and you've lost a lot, yes, there's a temptation to handle that in a way that we might end up calling depression. And we can talk about depressed mood. But our culture has actually actively encouraged people to consider things like medications if you're sad for more than 2 weeks when somebody close to you has died.
Right.
What is that? What is that? Because of course, sadness will be with you to some degree from that death, from that loss for the rest of your life. Doesn't mean it has to dominate or crush you. One of the things it's telling you, one of the gifts to receive is life is precious, relationships are precious, people are precious, love lost, in the sense that I don't have a place now to sit and speak with my mother. My mother's gone. I don't have a place to hold my wife's hand. She may have passed away, and so forth.
Right.
That rich emotional soup, it is what a human life is full of. It's not one flavor, and it would be very boring if it was. It's not sugar soup. It has many flavors and many moments, sweet, sad, and otherwise. So what ACT, but not just that, what the wisdom traditions and our analytic work on processes of change teach is that learning how to be emotionally flexible, cognitively flexible, and flexible in attention in the present moment from this kind of witnessing, noticing, more spiritual part of you, and then to focus on what's important intrinsically and getting your feet linked to that. Those 6 are what we call psychological flexibility. They're like 6 sides of a box. They all support each other. And when they're put together in a strong way, you're almost anything you can name is empowered, and you're much more likely to have these cul-de-sacs that we call mental illness. And you're also much more likely to have relationships at work, or be able to succeed in business, or be able to exercise or put yourself on a diet if it's needed, and so on. So let's learn the skills that live empowered lives. And sadness will be part of it. Anxiety will be part of it. Anything you can name will be part of it. You pay money for all those things. You ride roller coasters, you read tearjerker novels. There's no emotion you can name that isn't part of a life journey that's healthy. Domination, no. Clinging, no. Avoidance, no. But yes.
So I think it's very good reminder that often it seems like we tend to pathologize some of the basic human emotion, right? Like if I lost someone for 2 weeks, to be on medication is such a limited way of dealing with our emotion, because those emotions come with a lot of gift, in some way. There's other meaning and stories behind our emotions. So part of the act is to really sort of expose the story behind our emotions and try to understand it and gain some story and wisdom out of it.
I agree 100% with what you said. You know, it's not just emotions, it's thoughts, it's memories, it's bodily sensations, it's experience. It comes and goes. The one thing you most know about emotions is they will change. So stop clinging, stop running, show up, ride the wave, learn. And when you do that, emotions assume a role in your life that's more proportionate to the value that they bring. And not every thought is of importance, not every feeling or bodily sensation is of importance, but being able to have that broad openness to be able to take what's useful and leave the rest without suppression or avoidance or clinging. It gives you that kind of life flexibility. Psychological flexibility is not just about bending, it's about strength. It's about the strength have a vision for what you want to do in your life and for the things that deeply matter and being able to move in that direction. But if you can't bend with the wind, if you can't carry what's coming with you, if you have to stop and wait for the pain to go away, well, you're going to wait a long time and every tick of the clock will mock you.
So it sounds like one of the sort of the main difficulty or reason why people may suffer from the emotion is not so much the emotion, but is their reaction towards that emotion, right? Like how we either try to reject it or hide it or avoid it. Like, I guess Buddha, the founder of Buddhism, actually gave a story about don't get shot by the second poison arrow. I don't know if you ever heard about that story, but it's like, a person who got shot by one arrow, instead of just pull out the arrow right away, he's like asking so many questions on who shot me, where did it come from? And then you get shot another 3 more.
Yeah, we have good, clean pain that's visited us by life's moments. And then we have this unnecessary, dirty pain that's added by our mishandling of those life's moments. And almost always the mishandling comes from this sort of ego-based, cognitive, predictive, evaluative repertoire that we have as human beings. We have that ability of sort of treating your life as a problem to be solved instead of a process to be lived and experienced. And so you have this second order pain. Oh, when will it go away? Oh, it's so much, it's too much. I can't have this. No, I can't. That's very painful, but it's painful that comes from how you stand with the pain. So you have good, clean pain here and you stand here, or you stand here. It's up to you where you stand. The pain itself may have not been up to you. You may get a cancer diagnosis in the next day. That may happen. You may get an email of a close friend who's died. That may happen. And so that's not up to you, but where you stand with your own experiences is up to you. And that's the part that makes the profound difference. It's simple. It's not hard either. It's not effortful and muscly and no, but it's tricky because the mind is constantly tempting you into believing that if only you could subtract this and this and this from your life, you'd be more able to live. It's not true, because the deep message of that is that there's something wrong with you and you can't move forward until you cut pieces of yourself off. There's no healthy way to do that. There's none. There's no delete system button in the nervous system. You will carry your painful memories with you to your grave, short of brain injury. But can you carry them in a way that is not a heavy burden? Could be actually empowering, even mistakes you've made. I mean, if you look at something like guilt, the data on guilt shows that feeling healthy guilt over wrongs that you've done and being able to repair and care about that is actually a healthy thing. Shame, not so much. When you burden it down with, oh, see, that means there's something wrong with me. I can't be trusted. I will never be. No. You're taking this clean, recognizing that you've done harm and your actions doing something to repair. And you've put atop it this very mindy, critical, judgmental story about how this means you can't live the kind of life that you'd want to live, and that you're not responsible from there. After all, you're broken. well, that will have a cost. You can buy into that story, but when you
Right.
disempower yourself to live a whole human life.
So it seems like human has a tendency to add extra commentaries to all our experiences, and sometimes those extra commentaries are not helpful at all. So can you give us a little bit taste of how ACT work in terms of training people to sort of broaden that mental space, right? How do I train someone, or how do we help our audience to have a taste of what that mental space you're talking about, right? To embrace the experience as it is.
Well, that extra commentary you're talking about would be a really good place to start, because
Okay.
we're all going to have that. We have that voice within that's constantly talking to us, sometimes multiple ones. I mean, if you take any one and you say, oh, this is true, a little voice say, no. If you say, I'm good, a little voice say, you're not so good. I'm bad. Oh, you're not that bad. You know, you have a little conversation going on in your head, and it's multiple voices even. Part of what we teach in ACT is how to sort of take literal, judgmental, evaluative language that is sort of up close like this, so much that you can't hardly even see, and find a way to put it, not to get rid of it or subtract it, but just put it in a place where you can see the thought as a thought, and also being able to see what else is there that is beyond that little mental structure, that is outside of that little story. So we've developed hundreds of methods to do this. Now, a person who's a meditator and who's spent time recognize that sense of equanimity, of being able to notice thoughts without entanglement.
Right.
Thoughts, of course, but not just that. It could be a thought of, oh, I'm doing such a good job meditating today. If you take that and go, you've lost. You need to continuously allow it to have a little bit of healthy space between the observer and the observed, as you notice these cognitive formations come and go, like clouds in the sky, a common metaphor. So I can give you some examples that, no, it's not the same as a silent meditation and a 10-day silent retreat. It's not the same, but it is that I can reach people who are on the factory floor in about 30 seconds. We do things like distill that thought into a single word, say it out loud repeatedly for at least 30 seconds, at least once per second.
Okay.
If you're having a thought that you're a failure, nobody loves you, etc., pick one word in there that hits you hard, that you grab onto, that allows it to come like this. And just say it out loud, whatever it is. It might be failure. Just do that.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
And just watch what happens. Well, we've done like 15 randomized trials of that. And here's what happens. The distress produces by that comes down, and the entanglement and literality of it, the dominance that this is literally true or literally false, the sense that you argue with it to make it go away, or adopt it as a truth, but instead you can just allow it to be a thought, goes up in that 30-second period. Just try it. It's one of hundreds of methods that we've developed. Some of them funny, some of them very painful and will bring you to tears, but they all have of stepping back in order to see, not stepping back in order to get away. If my hand is like this, I know nothing about my hand.
Right.
If I put it there, I can see the wrinkles, I can see the color of it, I can see the movement of it. And the same thing with your thoughts. You don't put them there to diminish them or make them go away or subtract them. You put them there so that you can experience fully that thought as a thought, not as what it says. What it says is, I'm not a thought, I'm the truth. I'm you. Everybody else is disturbed. And you no longer even notice your thoughts. You just let the world structured by your thoughts. And then you're hopelessly lost. And you better pray that you have good programming, because in that posture, I'm not thinking anything. You know, these thoughts can drive you to almost anything.
Right.
Some of those painful things where you have let people down, let yourself down, the things that harmed your health, betrayed trusts, When you've
Mhm.
lied, when you've done all the things that humans do, you disappeared into a mental structure. You turned your life
Uh-huh.
into it, and then you paid the costs. So it's not healthy to be mindless. You want to be able to sort of notice, not
Uh-huh.
in a way that dominates or fixates or that clings, but in a way that allows you
Right.
to learn and to move forward.
Uh-huh. So if I understand correctly, one thing, like, well, I think it's good that you talk about 10-day retreat, because I'm sure a lot of people go to you are not interested in meditation or learning any meditative old traditional technique. But the technique you mentioned seems very doable and useful. So for example, I have a patient, like every time when something bad happens, she's always saying like, oh, I'm a piece of garbage. So what you're saying is that thought is very, and she became that thought. I'm a garbage, a piece of garbage. So for our audience, one thing they can practice is sort of take out the keyword garbage and then just keep saying that for 30 seconds. For example,
Little bit of air will come into the room when you do that. And many methods like that. I have a Tedx talk that was done at the Davidson Academy here in Reno, which is a school for children who have IQs at the 99.9th percentile or above. They're little budding geniuses, but they suffer so enormously because the minds at that level know how to turn on their masters. I mean, you can turn your life into a problem to be solved. So their tendency towards anxiety, depression, OCD, and so forth is no lower than people of normal IQs and maybe even higher. And so in that TEDx talk, if you look, I went through 12 of them, and I'll give you just a couple more so you get the sense. Give your mind a name. Give your mind a name. The part of you that your judgmental, critical, evaluative mind, give it a name. What does George have to say about this? You know, George is the name I give to my own mind. And just that one tiny device will produce a little bit of separation so that you can listen with more equanimity. That with another person, whereas you would disappear into a thought if it's in your head and you're in your own common voice. And another one might be to say the thought very slowly. I'm garbage. And in the slowness of it, you'll notice you're thinking. You'll have a tiny little possibility of making a choice about how to relate to that thought. Whereas if it's just automatic, I'm garbage, I have to, you disappear into it. And then goes away, but you're living the life as a person who's garbage, and that's painful. So there's many examples. I don't want, we sing our thoughts, etc. I don't want you to think that that's the same as meditation, but people do tell me. I've been meditating for years. I started using these methods, and now I see right in my process of meditation some of how this is working in a way that's actually empowered the contemplative work I do. Because people are doing things they've been trained by their family, by their religious traditions and so forth, and they haven't yet hit on it, the full power even of our contemplative methods. So I like to think that we're in an alliance, even though now we do use contemplative methods and we will borrow from wisdom traditions. But it is true, as you say, not everybody comes wanting that. And there's some parts of the country where, let's be honest, people will run to the door if you even use the word Buddhism. But I was in North Carolina for 10 years. Here in Nevada, not so much. In North Carolina, my goodness, you really had to know where they were, or you wouldn't use that word because their ministers told them that's the work of the devil and so forth. So, but it seems to me the name and the label shouldn't be as important as the process. And the method and technique shouldn't be as important as the process that it encourages. And so let's keep our eye on being of use to people and lifting them up, and be a little more open to different ways without saying the same. I'm not saying when you sent me an invitation, I said, I am no expert on mindfulness. I was a child in the 60s. I read Suzuki and Watts and lived in a commune, but I'm not a Buddhist scholar. I have written a couple things on Buddhism, and I've sent them to Buddhist scholars to say, and what I'm saying correct is that only a couple times, because people wanted things from me. And I made sure that I wasn't really saying things that were false, but I think we can work together. The process-oriented psychotherapy and intervention traditions and the wisdom can work together.
Oh, I mean, as someone who is trained in both Zen and psychotherapy, I see your work is very in line with the Eastern wisdom tradition. I mean, this ability to create this sort of metacognition or meta-awareness and to separate ourselves from our mental content is such an important skill. It doesn't matter from the East or the West. And you're one thing I'm very impressed with your approach is your approach comes with such a humor. I mean, to say your thoughts slowly is such a wonderful way of creating that mental space. Another one I like from your approach is, I thought was very interesting, is sort of, you could name your mind, give a name, right? But I remember from your book I read, one technique was sort of imagine your feeling as a little monster and sort of like a picture what kind of monster it is. And then picture your reaction towards that little monster and take that reaction and turn that into a monster. So now you have like two little monsters, and which one is giving you more trouble? That example I thought was a very useful example. But you know what, the reason why I like this approach, this two little monster, because I think that there's something that's even more important. You say our job is not to get rid of either one of the monsters. We are more like a bus driver driving those two little monsters. But the more important question, I think this is really, I think where our episode really want to go to now, is where does that bus want to go? I think that's a real key question here.
Yeah, that's the values question. That's really, what do you want your life to be about? What's the story that you're writing? And you know, values are the qualities of being and doing that you reflect in your life moments by the choices that you make, by the things that you do. It's very close to the word evaluation and can be turned into a judgment and a wagging finger. It can be turned into self-righteousness, and it's no longer helpful when you do that. But this softer connection to this yearning for meaning and purpose and the choice to be loving, to be genuine, to be honest, to be caring, to be compassionate, to be whatever, to be creative, to support others. These choices that we make of how to sort of guide our actions that are immediately present once you make the choice, because it's itself a values-based thing to make a values choice. And it never is incomplete. You know, if you're on a journey of being loving, at the point at which you own that, that's a loving thing to do. In the smallest thing you do to do that, that's a loving thing to do. Every single little step is that, and you'll never finish it. You're never going to say, okay, I'm loving now, time to go hurt people. No, it's not that kind of thing. It's not like, you know, having a ring and say, oh, I've got it now. Look at this precious thing I have here. It's in the box, the precious box. It's not like that. It disappears as soon as you stop owning your own journey. But if you simply show up to the intentionality that is already there in your behavior, what are you up to as you make coffee for your wife? Are you doing something just to keep her from yelling at you, or are you doing something because you care about making her morning a little more sweet, a little more connected, a little more loving? You know, that's up to you. And so when we do that, the skills we get, the flexibility skills of emotional, cognitive openness from this transcendent sense of self, this noticing part, this no thing, everything sense of self, the beyond categorization awareness that allows you to have attention that's flexible, fluid, and voluntary, and in the now. When you've done that, the purpose of all that is to connect with the kind of person you want to be and the social caring that it empowers. And I worry that in the West, especially, we've taken some of the wisdom traditions that are about these skills, but that also had right action as part of it, had commitment as part of it. And we sometimes put that aside in order to, because we've not been given permission, or we're not a monk or a therapist, I can't tell you what you value. Well, then you can be careful, get selfish forms of this. There was a study just in the last 3 weeks in the Journal of Psychological Science, one of the major psychology journals, showing that a relatively brief mindfulness training without any orientation towards values and the social extension of mindfulness led to lower levels of prosociality. People being more selfish. I think we see it.
Wow.
You go, the kids, I gotta go meditate. I mean, what is this? Only in the West could we do something so stupid. Because we've taken away the whole of it, which is about living a life that's full of meaning and purpose, of love and contribution.
Right.
And we can turn it into a form of self-soothing. You know, mindfulness junkies. So I think we need to be wiser in our wisdom traditions. We are, because they've evolved over many, many generations, and if they got it wrong, they've often tended to be weeded out. But in our psychotherapy traditions and our traditions in the West, sometimes we can take elements of things that are helpful and find ways to distort them, not on purpose.
Sure.
Being conscious of the whole person. So values are important.
Yeah.
I'm scared of mindfulness without values. I mean, really wondering, and especially if they don't have any kind of social connection, compassion, part of something, that sense of self that extends out to others, that connects you in consciousness to others, needs to be embraced, because there are people suffering in the world, and this isn't all about you. This is about us.
Right. I have to go check up that paper for sure. That seems like an interesting paper I should read about.
You won't be surprised by it. You won't be surprised. It's sobering and maybe initially jarring, but of course we've known that. Good teachers have known that. They guide people as to how to use these skills in a way that is caring, pro-social.
So it's I think it's important that you mentioned about this paper, because I always wonder, as a clinician yourself, how do you encourage your patient to seek out values and meaning and purpose? Because it's not an easy job, right? Medication is a lot faster. Hey, you feel sad, take a medication, you feel better. But value is a whole different level of issues. So how do you encourage people to find values or cultivate ethics?
Well, there's 4 pathways that I know of, and I'll name them quickly. Take your pain, flip it over, and look at what caring is there, such that hurts so much. Take your joys, look at them carefully, and see, why was that an especially vital, connected, and joyful moment? And you'll see them there. Take your heroes and guides, the people you look up to that you wish you could have consultation with when you're in trouble, or that you really say, boy, that's somebody. Slow that down and look, and you're seeing something in the way the person is living their life that you would like to put into yours. And the fourth one is, if you were owning your life as a story that you're writing, and you couldn't pick the characters or what the adventures would be, but you could pick the theme. Is this a tragedy? Is this a hero's journey? What is the story that you're writing with your life? Owning your own story will lead to your values. So sweet, sad heroes and stories are the 4 ways that I know that will be reliable guides to the qualities of being and doing that are intrinsic to your actions, not your goals, not your achievements, not your awards, not your money, not your vita, nothing like that, nothing external, but the journey in which the next step is meaningful precisely because it's in a direction or about something that you chose. That kind of That's what we mean by values. We don't mean, and then you won the prize, or and then you had a lot of money, or and then the
Right.
girl wanted you to marry them, or on and on. That will come or not, but
Mm,
it's much more likely that you will attract people to you and moments to you that are healthy and no promise. This is not the secret or anything like that, but you're much more likely if you're living your life in a way that is values based and has integrity, because people recognize that and they want you to succeed, and you're doing things where there's a kind of a karma that comes from the loving space that's created for yourself and others. But even if it doesn't, it's still intrinsically valuable. So those are the four ways that I know, and ACT has built out with many, many, many little exercises and measures and so forth as to how to do that.
Wow. So I think those 4 ways are really interesting and very useful. And I think it's great that you're inviting our audience to sort of be the author of our own life, right? To be the author of our own movie. What kind of film do we want to be in?
At the level of the theme, but not at the level of the elements. The ego-based mind says, "Oh, so I get to have, I get to get the girl at the end." No, you don't. Well, live a long life. That may not happen. No, we're not talking about Magic Land, Candyland, Pollyanna. We're talking about owning the meaning of your life's journey, and when you do that, there's a vitality that comes immediately. The first millisecond that you own it, you can feel it. That
Right.
I don't mean you can feel like it's always going to be happy, happy, joy, joy. I mean, a values journey might include things like, I'm going to do something about suffering. That means you're going to see a lot of suffering. Therapists see suffering from morning to night. But at the best, they're doing something that is worth of the life moments. Yeah. And so it's not a promise to have the form of happiness. It's the promise to have the eudaimonic form of a meaningful life, which is, I think, a very happy life.
Yeah, as Nietzsche would say that when you have a why to live, you can bear with almost any how. Yeah. So really to sort of to realize we have that freedom or authorship or ownership to our own meaning is really where the key point is. So we're very happy to have you with us today. Any final words or comment you want our audience to have?
Well, one I would say is that if you're interested in the ACT work, there's many, many things that are free. You can seek them out and so forth. They're very inexpensive, well written and successful self-help books and so forth, communities you can connect to. But even if that's not the form, I would say consider in your reading and your thinking and then what you listen to on YouTube and so forth, rounding out your spiritual journey, your life journey with things that some of the deeper clinical traditions are learning. And you can filter out some more helpful than others and round that out, because the invention of science is really a great invention by human beings. It can be mishandled like anything, but it's worth considering as part of your spiritual journey, your life journey, to look at what we're learning. And we as a human community are constantly learning. And so if you're interested in what I've been saying, many of these things are free. You can seek out psychological flexibility, acceptance and commitment therapy, my name, etc. I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm just saying it's there.
No.
There's people there and materials there that will help you on your journey, whatever it may be.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hayes. It's really a pleasure having a conversation with you. I personally learned a lot from you just by this conversation, and I hope our audience do as well. Thank you again.
But it was awesome chatting with you, Peter, and I think I've finally gotten you to say ACT.
Yes, ACT. So thank you for watching our Cafe tonight. I hope you learned something from Dr. Hayes, and please make sure to check out Dr. Hayes' work and books. there's a good community on ACT and how there are many different techniques to help you develop that acceptance and commitment and values. So every month, every third Friday of the month, 7 p.m. Stay tuned. Take care.